China's history with Africa has been a fairly recent one, but nowhere has China's emergence been more dramatic than in Africa. In 2000, China's economic ties with Africa have increased exponentially, and as of 2012, China has become Africa's largest trading partner. Historical precedents, including China and Africa's position with Western nations, provide important context for understanding the relationship between Africa and China. China and Africa's relationship started in the 1950s when the colonial rule of Africa was ending and the Cold War was intensifying. In 2005, the Badung Conference in Indonesia was a great platform for China and African relations to grow. Most African countries had joined the non-aligned movement, and China had declared the Soviet Union and the US as neo-colonialist. China was presenting itself as an alternative ideological partner with experience of colonial domination and exploitation. China offered military intelligence, weapons, and trained freedom fighters in African nations. After the end of the Cold War, both the United States and now Russia abandoned their African allies, allowing China to step in. Upon China outpacing the West as Africa's largest trading partner, it has moved from the periphery of the global international system to the semi-periphery, thus resulting in China gaining increased attention from the West had concerns over China's multi-billion-dollar resource-backed loans offered for infrastructure in countries recovering from conflict. The West believed that this was a debt trap for Africa, as when they cannot pay back their loans, China will confiscate their natural resources. Hence, the West labeled this as a new form of colonialism. China claimed that their infrastructure-directed aid model ensured that African countries they loaned would be able to build their infrastructure, thereby their economy, as a result having the funds to pay back when the time comes. China states that their investment in Africa is a strategic win-win partnership. From the beginning, this aid was promised to be based on friendship and mutual benefit. Still, the West argued that China's aid is a means of leveraging soft power and political manipulation. Referencing to the One China policy, here China states that they will give aid to any country who acknowledges that Beijing is the official government of China, thereby developing a source of steady allies. Its pledge to provide aid with no strings attached has the West arguing that China is aiding human rights violations, authoritarian regimes, and corruption. For example, Sudanese aid went against the UN's economic sanctions put in place against Sudan in response to their war crimes. China's business meant that it actively engaged dictators shunned by many other governments. However, China argues that their loans do not increase corruption, as its loans are directed by them to exclusively infrastructures. The West labeled China a rogue donor, operating completely outside the rules, making governance worse. Chinese aid was toxic and it stifled the real process while hurting ordinary citizens. North-South relations is exemplified here, where the West views any actions that are not compliant of their set rules or do not benefit them as rogue. This ensures that they stay in power and keep any other nations from developing into the core from the periphery.